Tonight, the death toll rises from the Sydney Harbour cruise debacle. More than 130 passengers now infected. And in the community, how are thousands allowed to disembark? Ignoring the rules, caught out despite the warnings, tonight the National Cabinet meets to consider a tougher lockdown. The reality of the shutdown, thousands more out of work, lining for hours asking for help. Centrelink can't meet the demand. The deal to save NRL clubs, players in isolation. Legends of the game ask, where did all the money go? Almost 75% of school children kept at home. The HSC to go ahead. And the pandemic of kindness, cabin crew brings smiles to young twins who love to fly.
Live from our Sydney headquarters, this is 7 News with Mark Ferguson.
Good evening. There's more heartbreak and anger surrounding the release of passengers from the Ruby Princess cruise ship in Sydney. A woman in her 70s has now died from coronavirus, becoming the state's 7th victim. She was one of 3 passengers stretchered off last Thursday. Now pressure's growing on the state government, with confirmed cases from that one ship now soaring to 133.
If there was ever a boat the government wished it had stopped, it's this one.
I do blame New South Wales Health for letting us off that boat.
And I don't care what criticism I get, throw it at me.
As the Ruby Princess hid beyond the horizon this morning, a woman in her 70s died from coronavirus in a Sydney hospital, a passenger of Australia's ship of shame.
When they knew that they had even suspected cases, the people being stretchered off the ship, I'm astounded they let us off.
There are now 107 confirmed cases of COVID-19 from the Ruby Princess in New South Wales alone, a further 26 interstate. In total, now 7 coronavirus deaths in New South Wales.
There was a good chunk of us who were travelling internationally.
Sydney passenger Eliza McCafferty flew to England without checks after disembarking the cruise. She has since developed coronavirus symptoms.
Fatigue. I'm sleeping so much, but then I'll have a coughing fit and it'll wake me up.
Eliza disembarked the Ruby Princess at 8:30am last Thursday, then into a hire car to Sydney Airport. After checking in, she waited in the Qantas Club lounge before boarding a packed flight QF1 for Singapore at 5pm. There was an hour changeover at Singapore Airport before the flight continued to Heathrow, then a 50-kilometre cab ride to Reading.
It has been a colossal stuff-up. They have allowed people to just come and go.
Since they scattered off the ship here last Thursday, the ADF and other agencies have been brought in to contact trace all 2,700 passengers, not only to work out where they've been, but who they've been in contact with. For the passengers now spread across the globe, it's too little, too late.
You know, I think they're less prepared than the people in 1918, frankly.
And Evan Batten is at the Overseas Passenger Terminal for us tonight. Evan, more ships are expected to arrive.
Mark, a total of 8 in the coming days. One of them, due in this afternoon, has been turned around, the Carnival Princess, with 400 crew on board, one of them showing signs of coronavirus. They are being tested and the ship won't be allowed in until those results are known. Mark?
Evan, thank you. In a blunt warning delivered today, police will consider mobile phone tracking to ensure those in self-isolation do stay at home. The state's confirmed cases spiked dramatically overnight, 149 new cases, bringing the state's total to 818. The national death toll now stands at 8. All this as we found individuals and businesses still breaching the new distancing rules.
Running the gauntlet. Joggers again ignoring the warnings at Bondi this morning, jumping safety fences, dodging the signs. Here, a surf lifesaving crew literally chases one off the beach. Surfers too, waving the rules.
Are you above the rule?
I'm not above the rule.
Then why are you going in a beach that's closed?
I think it's very selfish.
If it's right for one, is it right for everybody else? They can't do that.
And here, also at Bondi, a couple and child enjoy a cafe meal, flouting the lockdown laws. At this Alexandria cafe today, our cameras caught multiple offenders dining in.
We're just trying to work out why you've got a customer here, sitting in your cafe.
The owner claimed he'd asked the customer to leave. The customer says the owner told him nothing.
Why are you sitting inside a cafe?
I'm eating lunch, man. I didn't know I had to kick it out.
Well, he was sitting there right in front of you.
Yeah, I told him.
It's infuriating authorities.
New South Wales is at a critical stage in relation to the virus. We need to make sure the spread stops.
The police stepping up patrols and encouraging people to dob in offenders.
Our public order and riot squad, that if we need them, they are ready to go.
Getting tough too on those in self-quarantine, some Big Brother tracking.
Already had preliminary discussions about monitoring people's mobile phones that are in self-isolation.
Pushing privacy aside for the sake of public health.
They could even use the telco data to figure out where you are based on cell tower information.
And help us at this critical point flatten the curve.
But there are so many complaints of confusion and mixed messaging. Example, can you go for a jog if you're in self-quarantine? Here's the federal advice last night.
Quarantine means stay at home, sorry.
And the state advice this morning.
You can go out into your backyard. You can also go for a walk, but you need to stay 1.5 metres away from people and do not interact at all with anyone.
If you're looking for an example of tough corona protocols, Australian Natalie Gray and her partner have just returned to their China careers and home. Tested on the plane, again in the terminal, again outside. Then made to wait in a gymnasium for the results.
Some people got hotels to wait it out.
Before being taken by bus direct to their flat. Tested again and then allowed in.
They'll come and do our temperature every day, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Australia's system works on trust. This is Margaret Dogood in self-quarantine. We met her last week. She's now 8 days in and following the rules. We took her coffee. This was as close as I was allowed.
A bit of a fun challenge, really, to use what I've got in the place, yeah.
It could be reality for all of us soon. The Premier warning total lockdown is on the cards.
Undoubtedly, if we don't control the spread, we are looking at those options.
And Chris Reason is at Artarmon tonight, where the SBS newsroom has been evacuated. Chris, someone there has tested positive.
Yeah, good evening to you, Mark. The multicultural broadcaster becoming the latest in this corona crisis and the one that has played havoc with Australian broadcasters. The employee, a female, was an administration officer inside the newsroom here at the Artarmon offices of SBS. Those premises have now been deep cleaned, sanitised. Any employees that she came into close contact with have also been sent home for 2 weeks of isolation. They're now running the service from Canberra, shortened services, but they hope to resume normal service as soon as possible. Mark.
Yeah, we wish the Sydney team well, Chris. Thank you. For a second straight day, long lines stretched outside Centrelink offices across Sydney as the newly unemployed queued up for help. Adding to the frustration, thousands waited for hours only to be told, once registered, they also needed to apply online.
As if lining up for a handout wasn't bad enough. Police were called to Centrelink at Leichhardt today when one of their regular customers caused a commotion. Patience is wearing thin.
I've been here since 6 o'clock this morning, and then they tell you you've got to make a claim online, which is just appalling.
At service centres across Sydney, people began queuing before sunup, tens of thousands out of work.
Heartbroken. I manage a restaurant in Circular Quay, Sea Rock Grill, for 5 years, so yeah, last day yesterday and that's it for me.
These are people who've worked all their lives. Now, for the first time, they're having to ask for help.
It is. It's very hard. It's very strange.
You've still got bills to pay, rent to pay, mortgages to pay, and it's pretty daunting, actually.
The job seeker allowance has doubled to around $1,100 a fortnight. The government says people don't need to queue up. They can apply online. But to do that, new job hunters need a reference number they can only get in person.
It's basically kicking you while you're already down.
One of the biggest concerns is that all of this is only 24 hours into these national business closures, and with the government flagging more extensive shutdowns to come, these lines will only get longer. 88,000 jobs have gone already, another 200,000 expected in the weeks ahead. Today, Michael Hill Jewellers announced it would close its 156 stores indefinitely. 1,600 workers stood down to join a growing queue.
No more.
Andrew Denny, 7 News.
And the minister in charge of the MyGov website says he didn't predict the strong demand which caused it to crash 2 days in a row. Labor has accused him of incompetence. as the federal government works to extend welfare payments so that thousands of married couples don't miss out.
Lines of despair not seen since the Great Depression. A system overwhelmed, unable to cope.
My bad not realising that the sheer scale of the decision on Sunday night by the national leaders that literally saw hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million people unemployed overnight.
Stuart Robert has a history of not showing any empathy.
And today, not showing his face, leaving the Social Services Minister in the firing line.
We really are pleading with Australians to be patient.
Later advising,
you can go online and register through MyGov.
But the MyGov website crashed again for the second day running.
If you don't want to do that, you can remain on the phone and you can actually do your registration on the phone.
But those who did got this message.
Please call back later.
The Parliament passing the stimulus measures last night and extending the $550 coronavirus supplement to 250,000 uni and TAFE students. And 7 News can reveal Labor's accusing the government of reneging on a deal that could leave tens of thousands of unemployed people with partners missing out on that supplement altogether. The agreement would have increased the partner income threshold from $48,000 to $74,000. Labor believing the deal was done, agreeing to new powers for Minister Ruston to make the change.
Far more people will receive this one-off payment.
But now they might not. The Minister now saying she's just looking at it.
We are being very careful, working through all scenarios.
As the Health Minister reveals, 63,000 test kits arrived today and another 1.5 million on the way. With about 147,000 tests conducted, only 1.16% positive, the lowest rate in the world, and more ventilators on the way.
And Mark Riley joins me now from Canberra. Mark, the National Cabinet is meeting again tonight. What's on the agenda?
Yeah, some big issues, Mark, finalising exactly what a stage 2 shutdown will look like and what will trigger it. I'm told it's something between the current measures and the full shutdowns we're seeing in New Zealand and Britain. That might be our stage 3. Also discussing whether all state borders should be closed, including New South Wales, and forcing landlords to allow rent breaks for commercial and residential tenants in financial distress. The Prime Minister is expected to have a news conference when the meeting breaks up later tonight, Mark.
OK, we may talk to you then, Mark. Thank you. The Australian share market's unpredictable ride continues today, posting gains of more than 4% after yesterday's big slump. Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton joins me now. Gemma, we managed to recoup most of those losses.
Well, Mark, most, but not quite all. We're still sitting around lows last seen in 2013, despite a late rally proving a welcome reprieve. Particularly for bank shareholders, the big four all rose between 3% and 5%, while Macquarie was up 11%. But it was a cautious rebound. Gold miners, which do well when confidence is low, they led the way higher, and several companies today withdrew profit guidance, saying it's just impossible to predict right now what's ahead. Mark.
All eyes on Wall Street tonight, Gemma. Thank you. This year's HSC exams will go ahead despite looming disruptions due to coronavirus. State education authorities say there'll be special provisions for students who get sick and support for online lessons, as over 70% of families keep children at home.
Lounge room learning. Students across the state are trading desktops for dining tables. The Premier this morning confirming classrooms remain open, but kids should stay home.
Schools stay open. If you need to send your child to school, schools stay open. However, we are recommending at this time that parents keep their children at home.
And that message has been embraced. School attendance levels today at an all-time low, down 74%.
We have asked parents where possible to keep their children at home. It is a recommendation.
Working parents say it's a good compromise.
I've got no choice but to come to work.
We are in not a situation where we can't not work, can't afford it.
If you can keep your children home, you should keep your children home.
But there are concerns online forums aren't foolproof. Students log on to a portal each morning, some told to stay in uniform to focus on schoolwork.
Their principal, their school teacher, will still be in touch with them and with their child to make sure that that work at home is continuing.
It's after 3 o'clock and the bell for end of classes has just rung. The streets outside this school would normally be crammed with parents picking up their kids. But, as you can see, it's pretty quiet. But good news for parents this afternoon, with confirmation the HSC is going ahead.
We'll be able to provide parents and students with some more certainty very soon.
The message to students: keep studying hard. Peter Fegan, 7 News.
While players sat in limbo at home, the NRL struck a deal to save the clubs during crisis talks today. League bosses agreed to continue paying millions of dollars in grants to prevent the code's collapse, but some footy greats are furious.
He's an icon of the game demanding answers.
There may be no more league. I said, what?
The real question is, how quickly can we get back on?
But Ray Price and so many other people want to know, where has all the money gone from a game with $1 billion broadcast deal?
Who sets the pay rates for these people who are running the game?
Players are now in lockdown at home and coaches are waiting for the NRL to tell them how they're allowed to train.
In terms of headspace, it's probably still pretty surreal and just a weird feeling for me and most of the boys at the moment.
It comes back to caring about families, caring about our game, but caring about society in general.
Club bosses say 24 hours ago the situation was dire. That all changed on a telephone hookup with the NRL this afternoon when they guaranteed a payment of $1.2 million for April, May and June to keep them afloat.
The reality is everyone involved in the game will be taking a haircut.
People losing their jobs, having no income at all, so in saying that, it does put things into perspective.
On Friday, there'll be another phone hookup between club and league bosses to discuss restarting the season. They've been told the earliest it can resume is June and the latest is September, with a dramatically altered draw.
I think the game's in a really tough position and we'll get through it, but we have to all stay together.
Michelle Bishop, 7 News.
Hundreds of people are still dying every day across Europe, and that's despite draconian lockdowns. Britain is now also curtailing freedoms on a scale not seen since the Second World War. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's the only way to save lives.
Jam-packed tube carriages in London. Fewer services, so people who still have to get to work are forced to flout social distancing rules. And a weekend of Britons soaking in the sunshine at markets and parks forced the Prime Minister to act.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
People will only be allowed out to go shopping for food, seek medical treatment or exercise once a day. Gatherings in the street of more than 2 people will be broken up by police.
You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no.
Hoping to prevent the spread of coronavirus so the UK's health system doesn't collapse.
This is not a game. This is a real and immediate threat to society.
Weddings and christenings are now also banned in Britain, but in what may be an ominous sign of what lays ahead for this country, funerals will still be allowed. A French Navy ship is transporting the critically ill from the island of Corsica to the mainland. The military has moved in to help clean Spanish retirement homes where they found the bodies of coronavirus victims. A Madrid ice skating rink is being converted into a morgue. Italy's been in lockdown for 2 weeks, and only now the daily death toll appears to be reducing. But still, 602 people have succumbed to the virus in the last 24 hours. In London, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
Taronga, Sydney and Western Plains zoos will close tomorrow afternoon, shutting the gates at 5 p.m. The closure includes their Science and Learning Institute, all overnight accommodation at both locations and the Taronga Function Centre. Essential staff will continue to ensure the health and safety of the animals, and its 2 wildlife hospitals will stay operational. We'll have more on this crisis later in the news, and the latest will bring you any developments after 7 p.m. Then I'll have our next news bulletin tonight at 9:30. But time now for a check on our weather. Here's Brownie.
Yeah, thanks very much, Fergo. Cool and cloudy across most of the metro area today, as forecast. Now, the showers, well, they've been few and far between as highlighted by our weather camera in Blacktown earlier today. In fact, most falls less than 1 millimetre. Having said that, well, there's rain on the way as this trough strengthens over the next 24 hours. Isolated thunderstorms also enter the mix, most of that activity happening to the north. For us, well, our model paints this. I think we'll start to see some rain sweeping into our neck of the woods during the afternoon. And yes, some good falls are likely, 10 to 15 millimetres. But at the moment, as we look at current conditions, you'll notice it's sitting around about 21 degrees in most centres. Cold, though, high in the Blue Mountains, 16 degrees. Local forecast, top of the hour. Fergo.
OK, David, thank you. Prisoners in jails could be released early. Next, the new moves to stop the spread of the virus in the justice system. Also, a bizarre and violent home invasion leaves a Gladesville man fighting for life. Together alone, more celebrities join the cause to keep people at home. Later, is it a cold or coronavirus? The symptoms to watch out for and when you need medical help. And soon in sport, NRL boss Todd Greenberg joins us live about that deal to save the clubs. Welcome back. A man has critical head injuries after being hit with a guitar by a home intruder in his Gladesville unit yesterday morning. He and his partner were woken by a man who'd climbed through their bedroom window. This is the man police are looking for. They're asking anyone who recognises him to call Crime Stoppers. The 36-year-old victim is now in intensive care in Royal North Shore Hospital following emergency surgery. Some of our state's 13,000 prisoners could be released early under emergency changes to the justice system. Changes the Attorney-General himself calls extraordinary. Police too will be given extra powers to enforce COVID-19 quarantine measures. They've also been forced to chase down 2 armed toilet paper thieves.
2 men casing a Woolworths. Their target, toilet paper.
To me, it's astonishing that somebody would deliberately target supermarkets knowing the situation we're in.
The loo roll looters cleaning out stores in Western Sydney at knife point. But it's a threat closer to home that some are really concerned about. Domestic violence rates could soar.
People are being forced into isolation where they are being forced to spend more time with their partner.
And police now have more powers to adapt to an evolving situation.
Some of the amendments in this bill are extraordinary.
Including arresting people who have COVID-19, who are seen out in public and returning them home. Who else could be returning home earlier? Jail inmates.
To give the Commissioner the capacity to protect the health of inmates and correctional officers.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I don't think it's enough, though.
There's a push for more non-custodial sentences and a relaxing of the bail laws. Currently, those on remand make up 30% of the jail population, and the local court is trying to address that. The inevitable consequence of the delays will be seen as unfair for those languishing in custody. Chief Magistrate Judge Graham Henson announcing bails will be reviewed if an application is made, and they're expected to surge in the coming weeks. Already dozens of district and Supreme Court matters have been delayed. That number could go into the thousands within the next 6 months. Leonie Ryan, 7 News.
2 months after the virus epicentre of Wuhan went into lockdown, there are new pictures suggesting a slow return to normal life, with some shops open and buses taking workers back to factories. China claims they're in a 5th consecutive day with no new cases confirmed or suspected. However, an unidentified official claims every day there are still those testing positive but not showing any symptoms. China does not include those cases in its official count. Some of New York's famous residents are now urging people to stay home.
Not just to protect ourselves, but to protect others and all the older people you love. Please, I'm watching you.
Robert De Niro and Danny DeVito, both enlisted by the Governor to help get the message out. Crisis talks were held between NRL and club bosses today to try to keep everyone in the game afloat. Mel McLaughlin is here, and Mel, it's going to be a very bumpy road ahead.
It is, Fergo, but as we know, the NRL has fought hard to keep the game going and hope their financial support for clubs will do just that. Coming up in sport, we'll cross live to NRL CEO Todd Greenberg for more on the funding deal and how confident is he that all 16 clubs will survive. Also coming up, the FFA boss confirms the inevitable. The A-League season, like the rest of the sporting world, can't go on. And the latest on the Tokyo 2020 situation, with postponement looking increasingly likely. Which powerful nations are applying the pressure to the IOC? Surely it's just a question of when that will be confirmed.
Plenty happening off the field.
Yeah, there is.
OK, Mel, thank you. With more people working from home, it's putting unprecedented pressure on our internet capacity. Next, could access be rationed to protect vital services? Also, putting the economy before health, why the US could soon scale back lockdown laws. A dramatic arrest in Sydney South, what sparked this shopping centre meltdown? And with unemployment lines growing by the day, we'll look at the businesses bucking the trend and hiring. That's next. Welcome back. Police have made a dramatic public arrest using pepper spray to detain a man outside a Cogra supermarket. Officers say he was hostile and approached for a possible breach of bail. Police tell us it was not supermarket or coronavirus related. Internet and phone providers have been swamped with complaints as the system struggles, with tens of thousands now working and schooling from home. NBN engineers insist they can cope, and tonight they got a helping hand from Netflix.
Frustration at the Home Office for many trying to keep the wheels turning.
We're getting logged out early or things start freezing and we can't even turn our cameras on. Just give me a second.
As for mobile phone calls,
service to the telecommunications network you are calling is temporarily congested.
Telstra call volumes jumping 50%, traffic on the NBN up 25%.
We're extremely confident we've got the NBN at a level that we will be able to meet any demand.
People reporting problems with their internet and phones have spiked. Optus last night, Telstra today. Issues with the NBN are up as well. The same for TPG Internet, and it's happening right across the country.
Mom and dad might be home, they might be video conferencing at the same time. Meanwhile, they're streaming video to keep the kids entertained. Really just focus on using what you need. Don't be running things at the same time.
In the UK, there's talk of internet data being rationed to prioritise critical websites and apps. Our service providers confident we won't need that here.
This is the perfect time for NBN now to shine across the country.
Netflix now helping chill the network, reducing the data on its streaming service to ease congestion on the NBN. Serena Andaloro, 7 News.
In a time of so much doom and gloom, mass layoffs and overwhelming uncertainty, there are some glimmers of hope. While many businesses are collapsing, others are hiring, not firing, to cope with increased demand.
On the outskirts of Orange, apples make for a booming business. While so many companies go to the wall, others are thriving, like this producer of nutritional supplements.
We're actually increasing jobs opportunity for Australians.
Some big employers need extra hands on deck too. Telstra needs 1,000 more customer service staff to take calls.
It has driven additional workloads as we respond to customer needs.
The latest Seek job ads show more than 5,000 are in call centres, more than 2,000 in aged and disability support, also in demand, admin assistants and childcare workers.
The ones that we're finding at the moment in greatest demand are those within the logistics, supply chain, warehousing, distribution.
Woolies and Coles also boosting their job stocks.
The latest credit card data shows we spent 50% more on food in the last week than we did during the same time last year. Alcohol is also doing a roaring trade, and spending on health is up too, by nearly 25%.
Helping fill the shelves our farmers.
This paddock alone should grow enough wheat to make 2.25 million loaves of bread.
Showing for some, drought has finally been replaced by demand.
Calm the farm. We've got this. Have a great day.
Amber Laidler, 7 News.
As countries worldwide tighten lockdown rules, America could soon go the other way. Against all medical advice, President Trump is considering scaling back social distancing guidelines as early as next week to try to save the economy. Donald Trump arguing the cure shouldn't be worse than the virus itself.
8 days after shutting down his country, Donald Trump hinted he might open it again.
Our country wasn't built to be shut down.
The president losing patience with social distancing and the effect it's having on the economy.
We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem. This was a medical problem. We are not going to let it turn into a long-lasting financial problem.
Saying he'll soon announce a date, restrictions will be wound back.
We have to get open and we have to get moving. You can't keep it closed for the next, for years. Okay, this is going away.
As his experts warn, it's not.
I want America to understand this week it's going to get bad.
We're trying to make it so that it's much, much less bad.
Grand Central Station normally packed, but this is what New York's new rush hour looks like. Even with people staying at home, the number of confirmed infections continues to rise, with more than 1 in 10 COVID-19 cases around the world now here in the United States. The New York governor today touring a massive Manhattan convention centre being converted into 4 field hospitals as the nation notched up 100 deaths in a 24-hour period for the first time, the surge bringing the national death toll to more than 500.
You look at automobile accidents, which are far greater than any numbers we're talking about. That doesn't mean we're going to tell everybody no more driving of cars.
In New York, Paul Kadak, 7 News.
As pressure continues on the supermarkets, Coles is taking action to help those most in need. Next, the new hours for emergency workers, who is eligible to shop and when. Also, as the world oil prices plummet, why is there still pain at the pump? Where to find Sydney's cheapest fuel. Cold or coronavirus, the key differences and how to tell if you need to see a doctor.
Cool and cloudy today, soaking rain is on the way. Details soon.
A look at finance now, and as we've reported, the ASX finished just over 4% up. Technology led the way, Afterpay climbing 26%, while the big banks also benefited from a late surge, and the Aussie dollar is buying 59.57 US cents. Fuel prices have eased slightly. The average is $1.37 a litre, but we found regular unleaded for just 89 cents at Villawood. Coles will now dedicate special shopping hours for emergency services and healthcare workers to ensure they can stock up safely. Every Tuesday and Thursday, starting this week, the first hour of trade will be solely for doctors, nurses, paramedics, all our emergency crews, workers with an AHPRA card, workplace ID or in work uniform. And on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, Coles will continue community hours dedicated to vulnerable and elderly customers. With so many people out of work and facing severe financial hardship, the battle to pay household bills is tougher than ever. Today, we've seen the best and worst of organisations, some appearing to profiteer, while others are promising to help.
At one of Sydney's cheapest petrol stations, Christina Mifsud feels a little relief during these challenging times.
I'm on a limited income, so every little bit helps.
But other drivers are being taken for a ride. Oil prices are at a 17-year low, unleaded wholesaling for 93 cents.
So what we should be paying in Sydney right now is about $1 a litre, if not less. What we are paying on average is $1.37.
Also taking advantage, businesses selling household necessities at a huge premium.
$50, outrageous. Absolute disgrace. Makes my blood boil.
While others are trying to make it fair. At this Redfern convenience store, one roll of toilet paper, $3.50, or two for $99.
Some people very crazy for that. He take too much, but I don't know why. And I need some make for fair for everyone.
Despite pushing ahead with the April 1 price hike, private health funds will help members who are now struggling to pay bills, offering to suspend premiums on a case-by-case basis.
It may be possible, if in talking to your health fund, and every case will be different, to put that on hold.
Because dropping out could put unnecessary pressure on an already overstretched public system. Natasha Squarey, 7 News.
It is easy to be overwhelmed by the impact of this crisis, but there are those who are going out of their way to keep people smiling. And there are plenty of opportunities to get involved and spread some kindness.
They're only 14 months old, but these twins are obsessed with flying.
Are you ready to go in the aeroplane?
cabin crew kept spirits high, making Riley and Hudson Sutherland's trip more enjoyable during an anxious time for Mum.
It meant a lot that they were there, and they were there with smiles, which really they shouldn't be there. It's so stressful.
It's a feel-good moment for everyone, especially myself.
Novels delivered to your front gate is this bookshop owner's new service for seniors.
To me, I ride to work every day, so it was a no-brainer. Just, get in there and do it.
Stormtroopers are now handing out free toilet paper. 19-year-old Joseph Mayer from Sydney has put signs up offering to do grocery shops for the elderly.
Being able to bring one or two people a little bit of joy is... it's quite amazing.
Researchers agree generosity can make you feel a whole lot better. It doesn't take much to get involved and can be as simple as checking in on your neighbours or volunteering for a service like Meals on Wheels. And if you've got a voice, use it, like this nursing home carer in the US, keeping smiles on dials during this period of hardship. Jessica Ridley, 7 News.
As fears about the virus sweep the community, we'll break down some facts from fiction. Is it a cold or could it be corona? The symptoms you need to watch out for to keep your family safe. Don't miss that story soon on 7 News. But now Mel is back with sport, and the A-League and the NRL were the last to fall in the sporting world.
Yeah, they were, Fergo. The FFA made the announcement this morning. Yesterday it was the NRL, and we'll hear from CEO Todd Greenberg next as the focus turns to keeping every club financially stable through this period of huge uncertainty. And the postponement of Tokyo 2020 appears imminent. We'll hear from an Olympic gold medalist who may actually benefit from the change. Welcome back. While an official announcement is not expected for a few weeks, the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics are set to be postponed until next year. A senior Olympics power broker has confirmed the Games won't proceed this year, while our athletes are now coming to terms with another 12 months of training before Tokyo 2021.
The greatest show on earth on hold, and countries including Australia and Canada drawing a line in the sand.
This was absolutely the right call, and everyone should follow their lead.
The Olympics will almost certainly be postponed to July next year. That's despite an extraordinary statement today from the president of the Japan Olympic Committee.
There is still a possibility for it to be held as planned, but I think we have to consider various options.
It's wishful thinking for the host nation's Olympic Committee. The IOC will almost certainly rubber stamp the postponement of the Games in coming weeks. What they have to sort out now is a logistical nightmare. Games have been cancelled in the past during the World Wars, but never postponed. IOC member Dick Pound told a US newspaper today the Games definitely won't go ahead in July. On the basis of the information the IOC has, postponement has been decided. That means athletes have to reset. The 4-year cycle has just become 5, and that will be challenging.
Care for our people is, at this point in time, is the most important for us.
But for our Olympic gold medal winner from Rio, the postponement couldn't be better timing. Modern pentathlon champion Chloe Esposito was to miss Tokyo due to pregnancy.
I'll have the baby, see how we go, but it's definitely got my mind ticking over now.
Jim Wilson, 7 News.
And this morning, the A-League became the last major sporting competition to be suspended in Australia. Last night, the Newcastle Jets defeated Melbourne City 2-1 in Newcastle, but everyone in the game already knew what was coming next.
FFA has taken a very difficult and tough decision to postpone the final rounds to be a responsible citizen and help the Australian community and support the efforts to slow down the spread of the virus.
They will assess their status on April 22nd. Well, club bosses say an NRL deal to continue paying millions of dollars in grants has saved them today. That happened while coaching staff were sent home and players went into lockdown facing pay cuts.
I don't think those pay cuts should be taken out evenly. I think those on $700, $800, $900, $1 million a year, they should, burden the load.
Clubs have told us the most realistic chance of starting again this year is not until September. And we can cross live now to League Central and NRL CEO Todd Greenberg. Todd, hello to you. Thanks for your time. What exactly can you give the clubs and how long can you do it for?
Well, we're all in this together, Mel. That's what we've been saying to the clubs all along. We want to try to keep all 16 afloat throughout this difficult period, but that will mean a reset of the cost base, all of us, me included, the NRL staff, all our clubs, coaches and players. We're going to have to rethink about the costs across the game as we go through a very, very difficult time in the game's history.
Yeah, Todd, well, people perceive this as a big money sport, but so many clubs are on the breadline. Why is that?
Yeah, I think there's two reasons. One, obviously, that our games are now off and closed, and so the revenues haven't come in. But equally, during this crisis that we're seeing in our communities, a lot of our licensed clubs are also closed, and our footy clubs, particularly here in Sydney, have relied on them for such a long period of time. So, you know, we're in very difficult waters here, uncharted waters, extraordinary circumstances for our sport, but we're going to do everything possible in the next few months to stick together and get through it.
Well, how are you seeing this season possibly starting again this year, and what's a message to the fans?
Look, we're asking our fans, be patient with us. We're going to communicate as best as we possibly can. We're going to do everything possible to get back on the field. But I think in the most immediate challenges at the moment is much broader than our sport of rugby league. It's about staying safe in our communities, following the guidelines, because we've got to get through this issue together, and it's going to take all of us, our whole community, to pull together as one.
Exactly right. Thank you so much for your time, Todd. Todd Greenberg there at League Central. Fergo, so plenty going on. It's great to get an update from the NRL boss.
Yeah, patience and perseverance required right across the board.
Exactly, in the right perspective.
Thank you, Mel. Do you have coronavirus, or is it just the cold or a flu? It can be hard to tell in the first few days of infection, but there are differences, as Seven's Melissa Doyle explains.
Well, at first you may think it is just a common cold, and it could be, but COVID-19 can escalate rapidly. Here is what it looks like if you have it. According to the World Health Organization, around 80% of coronavirus cases are considered mild to moderate. 14% are severe and 6% are critical. To be clear, even a mild case of COVID-19 is not like a cold. The symptoms will still be debilitating, but most won't need oxygen. For a severe case, you will need supplemental oxygen. Critical cases require life support. Now, in the first few days of showing symptoms, it can be hard to tell whether you have COVID-19 or just a cold or a flu. And that's because at first the viruses share many of the same symptoms. 88% of COVID-19 patients present with a fever and a dry cough. And if that sounds similar to a flu, that is because it is. However, with a flu, you will likely also experience muscle pain and a headache, and these symptoms are rarely seen in coronavirus patients. But the best way of determining whether you have COVID-19 is to think about where you have been recently. Have you been overseas or been in contact with someone who has? If you're concerned you have the virus, you can call the 24/7 coronavirus hotline or phone your GP. And as always, if it's an emergency, go straight to hospital.
Thank you, Mel. David is back now with the latest forecast. Brownie, is the cool weather here to stay?
In the short term, Fergo, believe it or not, felt like less than 20 degrees all day. Rain tomorrow, your forecast. That's next.
Good evening. We're standing by to bring you the very latest from 7 News surrounding the coronavirus pandemic.
We will bring you up-to-the-minute advice from Australian leaders in their fields, top doctors, educators, and the Centrelink boss joins us live.
Join us in just a few minutes at 7 p.m. That's for the latest from 7 News.
Tonight's 7 News headlines: another passenger from the Ruby Princess has died of coronavirus as the number of passengers infected passes 130. The National Cabinet is meeting tonight to discuss tougher lockdown laws after more evidence of people flouting the rules. Police will consider mobile phone tracking to ensure those in self-isolation do stay at home. Thousands of people have queued at Centrelinks asking for help as the welfare system struggles to cope with the number of people in need. And just under 75% of children were kept home from school today as the state government confirms the HSC will go ahead. Now with the latest on Sydney's weather, here's Brownie.
Thanks very much, Fergo. Well, we've had a brief shower or two and rather cool conditions today, but rain is expected to build tomorrow. Today's temperature ranged from 16.6 degrees to a top of 21.6, and that happened by late afternoon for the suburbs. Well, as we can see, the showers were few and far between. In fact, all reported falls are less than 1 millimetre since 9 o'clock this morning. As we go to the satellite, we've still got some isolated showers along the north coast and central parts as well. This trough upstream, though, look at that. It's been driving some thunderstorms and some patchy rain over southern parts of our state. Now, the system is expected to strengthen as it gradually heads towards the coast tomorrow. Thunderstorms enter the mix this time, mainly through northern parts of our state. And of course, this trough is being pushed along by a rather vigorous southwest to southerly airstream. Now, some good rainfall totals are heading our way. In fact, this is what we're expecting to unfold within the next 2 days. In our backyard, potentially 15 to 25 millimetres. More is likely about parts of the central coast. Around the nation tomorrow, Brisbane, warm, sunny conditions around 27 degrees. Melbourne, cold and cloudy, yep, only 18 degrees. In contrast to that, check out the southwest corner of WA. Hot in Perth and 35 degrees. For our state, areas of rain and scattered thunderstorms gradually pushing north tomorrow. Most of the activity, as we can see, is generally confined to the northern half of our state. Good falls are likely along the ranges and also the adjoining western slopes. Back home, cloud increasing tomorrow. Rain is on the way, most of it falling from around about mid-afternoon. And a rather cool southerly is expected to push through late in the day. That southerly should run at around about 15 to 25 knots over our waters once it becomes established. For the city, cloud increasing, periods of rain tomorrow, top of 23 degrees. Quick look now at that 7-day outlook. The rain should ease to a few showers on Thursday. As for Friday, just a shower or two, more unsettled weather across the weekend. That's the latest weather. Mel and Fergo.
Righto, David, thank you. And that is 7 News for this Tuesday. The latest is next, and I'll have a special edition of 7 News tonight at 9:30. From all the team, have a great night.